The great Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk joins us right now. Mike, hey, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you guys. How's everything?
Everything's good. We're actually just all trying to read between the lines. There are a lot of conspiracy theories as to why the Patriots were chosen to start the season opener against the Seahawks. I know on the surface, many people can say, well, it's, just because it's a Super Bowl rematch. But I think New Englanders right now are thinking there might be a different reason. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I think the Super Bowl rematch is the most obvious, although it's only the third time there's been a Super Bowl rematch immediately upon the start of the next season. It hasn't happened in a decade, and that was actually a good game. NBC had that one 10 years ago, Panthers-Broncos, but for a missed field goal by Graham Gano, the Panthers would have beaten the Broncos in the rematch. I just looked at it objectively. Why do we think the outcome is going to be any different after what really felt like a suffocation 70s style in the Super Bowl in San Francisco? Now we go to Seattle, where it's tough for anyone to play except the Seahawks. They're hanging their banner that night. They don't have Kenneth Walker III. The Patriots may indeed have A.J. Brown by then, and a healthy Drake May and a healthy Will Campbell. So who knows how different it'll be. I know that maybe the Bears would have been a more compelling candidate, but at the end of the day, it's a Super Bowl rematch. It's the first game of the season. The Patriots are a national brand, and they always have been, at least over the past 20 years. And the Seahawks are emerging as a team that could potentially win another one. So I don't know that there's any theory that applies other than there were 9 options. 5 of the teams were tied up based upon other Week 1 games. So it came down to the Chargers, Cardinals, Patriots, Bears, and it ends up being the Patriots.
Well, I guess the theory is that, when you have a game this big, like the big season opener, you want to try to get as many fans as possible to watch. You've already got the common football fan. They got you, they got me. But what they want to get is the people who read People Magazine, the people who cover the stories outside of it and know about the whole Dianna Russini and Mike Vrabel situation. Do you think that there was any kind of maybe unspoken motive to putting that front and center during that first week of the very first game of the season?
It's kind of the Taylor Swift dynamic turned on its head. You have people who will rubberneck the game for reasons other than something the league would regard as a positive. So the league would have to be willing, if they considered that, they'd have to be willing to say, we don't care why they're tuning in. We don't care if they're tuning in so they can find something out about a story that who knows what relevance it'll have by then. It's kind of died down after having legs for a lot longer than I think anyone expected. But my first thought when I found out that was the game, Wednesday, September 9, and Tuesday, September 8, the night after Labor Day, suddenly looked like a perfect time for the other party to the situation to do a sit-down interview with Oprah or whoever. That would make things very interesting come Wednesday night if we hear the version of events as told by Dianna Russini the night before the game. And I have no idea whether or not that's going to happen, but nobody knows what's going to happen. That's been, I think, the characteristic of this whole thing from the get-go. You never know what's going to happen next. And it wouldn't shock me if we get the sit-down tell-all interview the night before the game.
Mike, would that maybe put a capper on this story that just seems to not go away? Does that need to happen for people to move on from this story, is for Dianna Russini to speak publicly about it?
Well, I think it ends part of it, but once you are injected into the paparazzi realm and you can't walk through the airport without being photographed or questioned, and I don't know how long that sensation lasts. I think back to the Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan thing. What a big deal that was. And I know it was a long time ago, but I just remember that was something that just burned so bright, and it fundamentally changed how the people involved were perceived forever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It would be useful, I think, to everyone if it just kind of died down. But there is that lingering question, given that we heard from Dianna Russini twice, the initial comment made to the New York Post, the content of her resignation letter a week later, and she drew a pretty clear line in the sand that this is nothing between Mike Vrabel's 2 statements and the photo dump from the New York Post a couple of days before the draft. It was pretty clear that her story isn't accurate. So it all comes down to whether or not she even wants to tell it and then what she has to say. And one thing I've been saying is, hey, in one sentence, because we don't know what she's going to say, in one sentence she could make it impossible for Mike Vrabel to continue as head coach of the Patriots if she really chose to go there. And we have no idea. That's the great unknown. That's the wild card. And it's a wild card that we don't know is even going to be played, which makes it even more of a wild card.
What sentence could she say?
Well, and let me be clear on this, because it's all speculation. But to the extent we're looking at something that could make it impossible to Vrabel continuing as Patriots coach, if her explanation went like this, and I know how the aggregators on Twitter are, so I need to be clear. This is just speculation. If she would say that, hey, I'm just trying to get by in a male-dominated profession, I'm trying to get any edge that I can, I can't compete with these guys, and a head coach told me, hey, I'll help you, I'll give you information, and there's a quid pro quo that's involved here, and that's how it all got started, and then it sparked a relationship after that. But if she would make that kind of a claim, I think that's the kind of thing the NFL couldn't ignore, because that becomes problematic under the law. It becomes problematic just as a matter of basic public policy in society, where you would have this dynamic where a coach is using a position of power to make a bargain that is premised on sexual activity, and that gets into what they call under the law quid pro quo sexual harassment. That's where it would become an issue. It's the kind of Harvey Weinstein stuff that sparked the Me Too movement 9 years ago, where you're conditioning professional favors on sexual favors. That's the way that this could go sideways for Mike Vrabel if she would ever say that. And again, that's speculation, but that is the kind of thing where if that dart gets thrown, it starts heading toward a pretty large bullseye.
Jeez, Mike, I haven't even thought of that angle.
Whether it's true or not, that's the thing. I'm not saying, I don't know. Yeah, and she had the comment in her resignation letter that the media speculation was unmoored from the facts. It sure looks like her denials are unmoored from the facts. So I don't know what she would say. This is what would upset the apple cart if she would ever say that.
Well, Mike, you've been writing some interesting and stuff that's made sense about this whole situation. And a couple of days ago, you were talking about how, speculating, will she talk at all? And you wrote some sort of settlement agreement with an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, would not be unprecedented in a situation like this. First of all, like when you say it wouldn't be unprecedented, does this really happen? And do you think that would be something that a team would do or somebody would have her sign and she just not end up speaking at all?
Well, and when I say a situation like this, I don't mean the NFL, but we've heard a lot in recent years about NDAs. There was the situation with the president, Stormy Daniels. That all flowed from an NDA. But Jerry Richardson, the Panthers owner, he had multiple NDAs that had been signed by people who disregarded them, told their story to Sports Illustrated, and that was the first domino in a chain of events that forced him to sell the team to David Tepper. Mm-hmm. So it's not uncommon when you're settling an actual lawsuit, when you have legal claims that either have been made or could be made, it's not uncommon for that settlement to include a confidentiality agreement, loosely known as an NDA. But it's also possible to just ask someone to sign an NDA. That was an issue in the Stephon Diggs trial a couple of weeks ago, that the alleged victim at one point was asked to sign an NDA. Famous rich people who want the people who are associated with them to keep their mouths shut are able to give someone money in exchange for a vow of silence. And yes, in theory, it's possible. Who knows if it's happened, but it's possible that there could be some sort of an agreement. If she's thinking about selling her story, she could sell her story to a vault, and it never sees the light of day.
How much do you think that would cost?
Well, things are worth whatever someone will pay for them. and think of it this way. I'll give you an example. All speculation. Let's say Oprah is going to pay her $10 million to sit down and have this interview. Well, you got to do $10 million in one if you want to do that. So, the leverage comes from what value is out there from someone else who would want to pay to have that story told on their platform.
Mike, if it does go sideways, what contingency plans do you think the Patriots would have in place? Could there be a temporary leave, a full leave, and who would be the guy that you would think would be the replacement?
And this is one of the reasons why the decision of Mike Vrabel to step away from the team for the third day of the draft was so much more jarring than I think anyone has realized, because it just kind of happened and we dealt with it and we moved on and the draft started the next day. Like, okay, he's not going to be there for the third day of the draft, but that's what turns this story into a football issue, and it shows that it can and will have football consequences. And the question becomes, will there be a greater necessity as you're trying to balance your personal life with a job that consumes your life? And for all NFL head coaches, you need to have your personal life in a situation where you can press pause on it and throw yourself into your job when training camp opens, and especially when the season starts. So I have suggested that if this fire just gets to the point where it burns so hot that Mike Vrabel can't do both things, yeah, leave of absence would be on the table. But it has really stabilized over the past couple of weeks. That's the best news possible for Vrabel and the Patriots. It has calmed down, and that drip has gotten to the point where we haven't seen anything that's really felt like a tipping point since the photos from March of 2020 were published by the New York Post at or about the time that Vrabel decided to skip the third day of the draft. So leave of absence would be one possibility. But the example I gave you earlier, if that happened, I don't think there's a leave of absence at play. I think it's he has to step down if it would be something that serious. And, you know, you got a guy on the staff who's been a head coach twice, and he's one of the most respected offensive coordinators in the NFL, and Josh McDaniels. I think he'd be the first guy that you consider as a replacement if it ever comes to that.
Yeah, Mike, let's change gears a little bit, and I'm just curious to get your thoughts on a lot of people talking about the games, the schedules that came out, and just games basically almost on every night of the week, it feels like, these days. Your thoughts on so many standalone games, not as many Sunday games, and the theory that, you know, that maybe this is a tipping point for the NFL. People are going to it's oversaturated. Your thoughts on that maybe being the case, and just all the games being played throughout the week now?
Well, I think what Jerry Jones said when he was asked about the Mark Cuban pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered line several weeks back at the league meetings, Jerry Jones said, if the duck's quacking, you feed it. It's taken this long because we learned they had the capacity during the pandemic to find a way to stage games Tuesday and Wednesday night. I'm surprised we don't have regular Tuesday or Wednesday night NFL football, because Friday night and Saturday is off limits from the second weekend of September to the second weekend of December. That's part of the trade-off under the Sports Broadcasting Act, and that antitrust exemption has been a talking point lately, because you could argue that selling games to streaming goes beyond the exemption the NFL is allowed to have. You've got political pressure to get rid of the exemption altogether, which would turn the NFL's business model on its head. But as long as they can keep plucking games away from that cluster that's played at 1 o'clock Eastern Wednesday afternoon and make them standalone games, you're trading out a game that's going to be watched by a small portion of the country for a national broadcast that is worth a lot more. But you're right about Sunday afternoon. You know, week 16, Christmas weekend, there are 10 total windows. 10. You've got 3 on Christmas, 1 on Christmas Eve, 2 the day after Christmas, the usual 3 on Sunday and Monday night. 10 windows. That depletes the supply of games, and I think it makes Sunday Ticket a lot less attractive. You've got 8 games played that Sunday afternoon. You're going to get 3 of them for free on Fox and CBS. You're getting 5 more if you're paying the freight for Sunday Ticket. I think that at some point they're really going to have to take a closer look at whether or not Sunday Ticket's a viable product.
Hey, Mike, we finally get Tom Brady back for a broadcast on Fox against the Packers. Are you is there any evidence that he avoided this on purpose for a couple years? Was that intentional at all? And how do you think his relationship with Robert Kraft is currently?
Well, I think that when you go to work for the network that historically is the place that has the NFC package, it's not going to come around very often that you end up covering a game with any NFC team. It took him 2 years to get to the point where he went to Buffalo. And so if he was paired with Jim Nantz of CBS, he would have been in New England by now. And I don't know about the relationship with Robert Kraft. I know when he made the comment before the Super Bowl about, I don't have any dog in the fight, that prompted all sorts of speculation. You know, did he want to buy a piece of the Patriots for a sweetheart deal? and the Patriots weren't interested. So he went to Mark Davis, and Mark Davis let him buy, along with a couple of others, 10% of the team for a ridiculously below market rate. I don't know. But he is an owner of the Raiders now. And in the strictest sense, that's his loyalty. That's the team that he's part of. And he's trying to do this strange balancing act where he covers all 32 teams as Fox's top analyst, but also is partial to, and by definition, in the camp of the Raiders. It's just an awkward situation. The league allowed it to happen, and I think Brady's just trying to navigate this existence now. But he's got a statue outside the stadium. I'd like to think he's not going to get harassed when he comes back.
Well, to that point, Mike, we were having a discussion the other day about, do you think that Tom Brady was paid to come back for that big ceremony they had here? Do you think that they had to pay him to come back a large amount of money?
That's an interesting point. I don't know that in and of itself was a transaction. It may have just been a byproduct of a broader relationship that had seen Tom Brady get paid a lot of money over the years. So I wouldn't, man, that's something. You've got leverage. If someone's going to give you a gigantic award and have this big night where they pack Gillette Stadium, do you have the gall to ask for an appearance fee? That you've made it when you can do that.
That's right.
I mean, if anyone could do it, it would be him. And then you hear stories about Bill Belichick stories. I mean, we've got somebody sitting right here who was there. Ted Johnson was backstage and said that Bill Belichick slunk in after everyone had already come in and then left immediately after he was done. And that to me sounds like someone who was paid to be there.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point. And, given everything that's happened since that night, you really wonder if that could ever happen again under any set of circumstances. And it seems like the hostilities have died down between Belichick and the Patriots. And I hate to put it that way because I think from the Patriots' perspective, it's like, what the hell is going on? Like, what did we do to have Bill Belichick be so mean-spirited and so aggressive in the position he's taken as it relates to the Patriots? But the passage of time tends to help everything. And if everything just kind of dies down, then maybe we get to a point where Belichick takes a step back and realizes that, he had it pretty good in New England. He was able to run that team however he wanted. Now, it was because he won. I guarantee you this. If he hadn't won, he'd have been out on his ear sooner than later.
Yeah,
you can't be Bill Belichick and lose. No one's going to give you the benefit of the doubt when you treat people the way that he seems to treat people. But he won, and he had a place where he was able to win. And it's just sad to see in the aftermath of that unprecedented run of greatness in the NFL, especially in a salary cap era. It's just sad to see relationships fractured. Everybody should be getting along.
Mike Florio, great stuff. This is going to be one hell of an interesting offseason to see how this all plays out here in New England. But man, great having you on. Let's connect soon as more news breaks with all this crazy stuff. All right, Mike?
Hey, guys, great talking to you. Call me anytime. Happy to talk.
Thank you, Mike.